If you're young and playing it safe, you might be making a huge mistake. If you're between 20 and 30 years old and playing it safe, you might be making one of the biggest mistakes of your life. I know, that sounds dangerous, because we grew up hearing the exact opposite. Play it safe. Don't take risks. Choose stability. Have a backup plan. Protect yourself. Don't lose. But there's a deep problem hidden inside that mindset. It can lead you to your 40s without ever truly living, without building something meaningful, without ever attempting what actually mattered to you. And the most ironic part? You're probably in the exact stage of life where you should be taking the biggest risks. Because there's a truth that very few people tell you. You should take your biggest risks when you have the least to lose. And if you're in your 20s or 30s, there's a good chance this applies directly to you. But our generation seems to have developed an almost pathological obsession with safety. We want stability before experience, certainty before action, guarantees before effort, and it's quietly paralyzing us. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Life doesn't only reward intelligence, it rewards exposure. The people who build extraordinary things usually weren't the safest people in the room. They were the ones willing to look stupid for a while, willing to fail, willing to lose, willing to take risks. But before we go any further, we need to define something important. When I say risk, I'm not talking about recklessness. I'm not telling you to quit your job, sell a kidney, and gamble your entire future on some random cryptocurrency called Moondoggy Coin. That's not courage. That's stupidity. There's a massive difference between irrational risk and asymmetric risk. And this might be one of the most important ideas in this entire video. An asymmetric risk is when you have very little to lose, but a lot to gain. And guess what? Youth is basically an asymmetric risk machine. Let's be honest. If you're 23 years old, living with your parents or splitting rent, no kids, no major assets, no overwhelming financial responsibilities, do you really have that much to lose? Because 20 years from now, you might. You may have a spouse, children, a mortgage, employees depending on you, aging parents, real obligations, real consequences. But right now, the biggest risk of your life might actually be not taking risks, because the cost of inaction is almost always invisible. We notice the cost of losing money, but we rarely notice the cost of never trying. Nobody sees the parallel universe, the business you never started, the YouTube channel you never launched, the skill you never learned, the city you never moved to, the opportunity you never took, the life you never lived. And that brings us to a book that completely changed how many people think about money, time, and experience. Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. The core idea of the book feels almost heretical in traditional financial thinking, that endlessly accumulating money doesn't actually make sense, because money is a tool, not the final goal. And here comes an uncomfortable question. What's the point of becoming incredibly wealthy at 70 if you sacrificed your entire youth trying to minimize risk? Because some experiences come with expiration dates. You can backpack across countries at 25, but you probably won't want to sleep in hostels at 68. You can reinvent your career at 28. At 55, that becomes much harder. You can build something from scratch while your tolerance for failure is still high. Later, the social and financial cost increases. Perkins calls these time buckets. Life happens in seasons, and some opportunities expire. That should scare you, because maybe you're wasting the exact phase of life designed for experimentation. But there's another modern problem. Our generation was raised to be afraid of failure, afraid of judgment, afraid of looking broke, afraid of seeming lost, afraid of not having life figured out by 25. And social media made all of this dramatically worse, because now you compare your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. You see someone your age becoming a millionaire, someone else getting married, someone traveling the world, someone going viral, someone building a dream life. And suddenly you think, I'm falling behind. So you stop, you freeze, you play it safe. But here's the reality. Your 20s are supposed to feel chaotic. Actually, they're meant to be chaotic. You're not supposed to have all the answers. You're supposed to be testing ideas, failing quickly, changing your mind, discovering who you actually are. The problem is that we confuse youth with early stability. We want predictable lives during the exact phase of life that's supposed to be experimental. And now I need to say something that might make you uncomfortable. You're probably overestimating failure. Seriously, what actually happens if things go wrong? You lose money? You learn, recover, start over. You move to another city? Don't like it? You come back. You try building a business? Fail? You'll probably learn more in 2 years than most people learn in 20. But do you know what truly destroys people? Regret. Because failure hurts, but regret slowly eats you alive. There's a brutal quote often attributed to Mark Twain. At 20, you care what everyone thinks. At 40, you stop caring. At 60, you realize nobody was ever thinking about you. Brutal, but strangely liberating. Now, I want to connect this idea to something that might surprise some people. Bitcoin, and relax. This is not a sales pitch. This is not me telling you to buy Bitcoin now. The point here is philosophical. Because there's something deeply connected between youth, risk, and Bitcoin maximalism. But first, we need to understand what it actually means to be a Bitcoin maximalist. A Bitcoin maximalist is not someone trying to get rich quickly. In many cases, it's the opposite. It's someone obsessed with long-term thinking, with sovereignty, with protecting themselves against monetary inflation, with independence from the traditional financial system, with preserving value across decades. The maximalist thesis starts with a simple question. What if government money is structurally broken? What if inflation isn't an accident, but a feature? What if working hard and simply saving fiat currency is quietly making you poorer? For a lot of young people, this no longer feels like theory. It feels like lived experience. You work harder, everything becomes more expensive. Owning a home feels impossible. Purchasing power declines. Saving money feels pointless. And eventually, a difficult question emerges. Do you keep playing the traditional game or take a calculated risk on a new monetary technology? And notice, I'm not talking about irresponsibility. I'm not telling you to throw your entire net worth into Bitcoin without understanding what you're doing. But I am saying something difficult. Major historical transformations tend to reward the people who had the courage to understand them early. The internet, computers, smartphones, artificial intelligence, and maybe Bitcoin. Or maybe not. But that's not even the main point. The real point is this. Your 20s and 30s are exactly the phase of life where you can afford to deeply study ideas like this, to experiment, to fail, to learn, to take proportional risks, because risk changes with age. If you go broke at 26, you still have time. If you go broke at 58, maybe you don't. That changes everything. But there's something even more important than money. Because the greatest asset of youth is not financial capital. It's your ability to recover. You have energy, time, mental flexibility, fewer responsibilities, a higher tolerance for mistakes. And yet, paradoxically, so many young people live like retirees, ultra-conservative, afraid of everything, waiting for absolute certainty, waiting for permission, waiting for guarantees, while life quietly moves on without them. And maybe this is the central question of the entire video. What exactly are you trying to protect yourself from? Because there are only two kinds of pain, the pain of risk or the pain of regret. Choose your pain. Because 20 years from now, you probably won't regret the intelligent risks you took. You'll regret the moments when you betrayed yourself, the moments when fear won, the opportunities you ignored, the versions of yourself that quietly died because you chose excessive caution over courage. Die with zero reminds us of something deeply uncomfortable. You don't take money with you to the grave, but you do take memories, stories, experiences, impact, the life you chose to live. So maybe the goal isn't to die rich. Maybe the goal is to avoid dying full of regret, and that requires courage. The courage to feel lost for a while, the courage to fail, the courage to change direction, the courage to bet on yourself, the courage to study new ideas, the courage to build wealth differently, the courage to think outside the standard script society hands you. Because maybe the greatest tragedy in life is not failure. Maybe it's reaching 50 years old and realizing you spent your entire life minimizing losses without ever maximizing possibilities. If you truly have little to lose, then maybe this is exactly the moment to take the biggest risks of your life. But smart risks, calculated risks, risks that expand your freedom, your experiences, your abilities, your future. Because time moves faster than you think, much faster. And the real question is, when you look back at your life, will you see courage or just fear disguised as prudence? Now I want to hear from you. Do you think young people today are taking too few risks, or simply the wrong ones? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this video made you think, subscribe to the channel, because here we talk about money, philosophy, technology, and the ideas shaping the future, without romanticizing the system.